Hi, and welcome to Parting the Clouds. I am your host, Annette Hoegner. I am an Evox practitioner in the Inland Empire. Evox is a software by Zyto that helps people get unstuck from unhealthy emotional perceptions. It uses galvanic skin response and it measures your voice octaves, much like a lie detector test would, to show me where you are out of balance, and it helps me pinpoint the root of the problem. If you're interested in learning more about Evox, please visit my website at evoxsession.com. Hi, welcome to my new podcast called Parting the Clouds. I am your host, Annette Hoegner. This podcast will focus on shedding light on the darkness of emotional bondage through testimonials of people that have been set free, as well as teaching on healings and breakthrough. Hi, today we have quite a story to tell. My guest is Leslie Hurtado. Her testimony is really incredible. Back in episode 2 of this podcast, I interviewed Linda Triska, who wrote the book, The Work of His Hands. Towards the end of that book, there is a chapter called Miracle Healings. She featured Leslie's story and suggested that I interview her for this podcast, which I am so glad that she did. So I called Leslie, and after a few minutes, we realized that we actually went to the same high school, shared classes, and were in the same graduating class 27 years ago, which is pretty incredible because she is now from Adelanto and I am from Corona, and that is not where we went to school. So it's quite the coincidence, but the Lord works in mysterious ways for sure. So I'm so happy to have you here, Leslie, and with that, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to tell my story.
Wonderful. So let us hear about from the first part where you feel it's significant, and we'll go from there.
Okay, we'll start with my adult life. When I was 20 years old, around 20, I got married to someone I didn't know. He was in jail for murder from the ages of 15 to 25. And I didn't know about that until his mom came into our apartment with the newspaper. When he was 15, he murdered a 5-year-old in Redlands. So every time there was a teenage incident, his name would be out in the newspaper. So she said, I think you need to tell Leslie this. But I had to look it up on everything that happened. But while he was in prison, he got an associate's degree in psychology. So he had everybody thinking that I was bipolar because of some of the fears I had. And he had me on 23 different antidepressants. So I would just sit in my room like a vegetable, and my mom would send my brothers and sisters over to watch me to see if I was okay, because I couldn't even say my name. So then, about a year in, my best friend from our school, she took me to Montana, and she goes, we're going to go to the Marble Ranch, and don't have to worry about paying for nothing, but you're leaving all your medicine home. And I was like, okay, sure. So I left all my medicine at home, had the time of my life, and came back and divorced him. And then in that 1 year, I had 8 miscarriages. Found out that he had translocation chromosomes, which are, if he was to ever have a baby, it would be severely handicapped if it stayed. So my body, I guess, knew that.
How did you figure that out?
After the 6th or so miscarriage, we went and saw a geneticist, and they did chromosome typing with myself and him. And then what it is it's like a little tail on one of the chromosomes swapped and went over to another chromosome. So they were deformed on one of them.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the last I've seen, heard, whatever from him since the divorce, over 20 years ago. Then I went and got married right after that to someone I thought I knew for 17 years who was a family friend. But behind closed doors, it's someone I didn't know. And then after a year of that, after getting beaten broke my foot. Just a very, very violent situation. I left him about a year after we got married. And then after that, I met my kids' dad. We were together a short time, and my kids were conceived and born. Then, so it's like a pattern, just from one, like looking for love in all the wrong places, I guess you could say. And then I was at a bar on Christmas Eve, I think it was, and I met this guy who swept me off my feet and told me everything I wanted to hear. Said that he would adopt my kids, all this stuff, and we were married for 5 years. And I had to have a back surgery, so yeah, I used to dispatch for CHP and Caltrans for 17 years, and that was like my dream job. That was just everything to me. But after my back surgery, I couldn't work anymore because I was also a hazmat first responder. So I couldn't pick up the 55-gallon drums if I needed to. So with me not able to work, he didn't like that. And then when all of my retirement, because I went a whole year without pay until the state figured out if I was old enough to retire or whatever, a lump sum of money came into my bank account, and he took it all and told me and my kids that we are going to go in the streets where we belong. And we ended up there. Because I learned a very valuable lesson during that divorce. That if your spouse sits there and says, like when you get your title to your car or your bank account, and it'll either say Leslie or so-and-so, or Leslie and so-and-so. If it says or, you don't need two signatures to sign off on anything. So they can close out the banks. They can cancel all the credit cards. They can take the car and put it in their name only. So that's what he did. And so me and my kids just packed up and went up the hill where it was a lot cheaper to live. So we'll fast forward.
How many years ago was that?
It was about in 2014 is when I got divorced.
Okay.
So in 2015, I'm still a little shocked that this guy was everything. He gets an Emmy for his little acts. But so I met this guy that reconnected with this guy that we went to school with, and he was like a little rebel, just tattooed everywhere, whatever. But come to find out, he was putting drugs in my food and drugging me and taking off of my car and a bunch of other stuff. And I found out that he was into witchcraft stuff too. Like he would light candles in my house, the tall, like the white tall candles and different colored candles and all this stuff. And just stuff was happening left and right, like bad stuff. And I ended up with in the hospital on a Christmas in 2016 with aspiration pneumonia. And that is very, 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 it could be deadly. I had ingested, I guess I got sick in my sleep and ingested it into my lungs. So I went through a bunch of medical tests after I got home from the hospital. And then my lung doctor said that I had a hole in my lung and that he wanted to check it out. And within like 3 weeks, it grew. And then in another 3 weeks, it grew again. And this is what the story that Linda tells in her book. So I go through a bunch of tests, and we find out that my lungs weren't damaged from the aspiration pneumonia, that actually had a huge hiatal hernia. And every time the hernia would slide up, it would push all the contents in my stomach up, and then I would vomit in my sleep. So after that happened, I ended up leaving that guy. And for 3 years, my life, or mine and my kids' lives, were like living hell. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he would break in. He would just break in at all times of the day. One time, I was getting ready to do a photo shoot, and he broke in and almost smashed my face against the faucet. And I jumped back, so then I turned around, and he sliced my face. So then I stopped modeling after that. It's just too much. Then after all the break-ins and stuff and going through everything, CPS was at my house every day. Cops were at my house every day. The cops wouldn't even do a restraining order. They said that he was avoiding service. So we pretty much lived in fear. So I moved. When I moved, I thought I was safe. And so I went and I had a hiatal hernia surgery. During that surgery, they fixed the hernia. They said that I had to go back to my lung doctor because there were some issues. So I went back to him, and then he's like, it's not your lungs that's doing this, it's your digestive tract. You need to go back down. And after the hernia surgery, it was about 2 weeks. There was a commotion in the middle of the night, and he broke in again. And this time he threw me across the house, and being fresh out of surgery, when I hit the tile, it ruptured my esophagus. So we had to come back down to Marietta, and I was bleeding internally for about 2 weeks and just very, very weak.
So you waited 2 weeks from that incident before you went to the doctor?
No, I was at the doctor's up where I live, and they didn't know what was going on. They just kept sticking scopes down my throat, which when I finally went to UCLA 3 years later, and they said that, I went to Loma Linda. Loma Linda said that the doctors up where we live had made my esophagus look like lunch meat. So they had to do a gastric bypass. So they did the gastric bypass. After almost 13 hours of surgery, they sewed me up backwards.
Oh my gosh.
Twisted. But during that time, I went back down to Marietta, and they tried to fix the rupture and all that, and I ended up passing away twice. Before that time, I didn't grow up with any type of religion. So as a kid, because my mom and dad weren't religious, we used to play with the Ouija board. We, now that I know what I know what doors I've opened. And then one of my friends told me when I got divorced, she said that there was she felt the dark heaviness around me, that she wanted me to go see her friend. So she took me to this tarot card reader, and the first card she flipped over was the devil card. And she's like, when I saw the devil card, I was just like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And then she said my ex-husband's name. I don't know this lady. So I was like, of course he's the devil because of everything that he's done. Well, when I had passed away, it got completely black.
It's okay.
There was Satan there. There was 3 of them. And they circled me with their wings. It was going to take me down. Then Jesus showed up. It was bright white. It was Jesus and my grandparents. And when he said, oh, no, you don't. Well, not like that, but he said, no, you're not taking her. You're going back to hell. She's got a story to tell, lives to change. And her 2 kids, she's all they've got, and she has to raise them. So after that happened, there's 2 weeks that I was in the hospital that I don't know nothing about.
Pause 1 second, because in the book it said your maternal grandparents were there as well with Jesus, and all you knew about them was that they used to pray a lot.
Yeah,
is that correct?
When Linda was writing her book, she asked me a couple questions, and I had to call my mom and ask, like, did my grandparents pray? Did we have any type of spiritual background? Because there's got to be some reason why Jesus came. And she was like, oh yeah, well, you see, our family has a Baptist church in Texas that looks like the one on Little House on the Prairie. And I was like, okay. But here I am, 40 years old, and I never knew this. But I knew that my grandma had a rosary, and every time a storm would come, she would rub the rosary, and there's a big indent in it. But I knew now, looking back, because my grandpa died, I was in my 20s, like early 20s, because I was still married to the first ex. But when he died, before I even knew he passed away, it was in the middle of the night, and in my doorway, a man was standing there, and he woke me up, and he goes, and I was like, Ray, is that you? Which is my first ex-husband. And he goes, no, it's not Ray. Don't worry, baby girl. But everything's gonna be all right now. And I was like, okay. So I went back to bed. When my ex-husband came home from work, I said, did you come over for lunch at all? And he goes, no. And I go, okay, well, my mom called, and it was about a half hour after the man was standing in my doorway. And she goes, I'm flying to Texas. Your papa just passed away. So I was like, that's odd. Maybe that was my grandpa there. And my mom goes, well, why would he visit you and not me? And I was like, I don't know, Mom. But I know now that if I didn't make the choices I made back then, because of free will, that I would probably be okay. But I think the Lord orchestrated certain things for His glory. During the third divorce, after the tarot card reader, I went and my friend, also the one that took me to tarot cards, she took me to her good friend, another one, but he dabbled in Palo Santo, I believe it's called. But it was, and he written a book about the devil, and he even spent some time with him. But he even told me, I don't know what you're doing or whatever, but you need to grab a hold of some type of religion, whether it's mine, Catholic, Christian, whatever, but you need to have a higher calling, and you need to do it now. Well, now I know why he was telling me that, because he saw that I was going to die or whatever. And, but I guess when they say that if you don't know, you don't, like, he can't really chastise you for it. Because I knew nothing about the Bible at all. I didn't even know there was a God. My mom thought that it's people that are crazy that believe in God, or that it's a fictional character. But
So Palo Santo, that was the first I had heard of that when you mentioned it. So that's a form of witchcraft. like a Santeria.
Yeah.
Okay. So I find it interesting that he would tell you if that's what he was doing or into that kind of a thing, that he would even mention whatever religion, Christianity or even Catholicism, as an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be interesting to know exactly what he saw.
Yeah, he even said, he goes, whatever you do, when you do go and you worship whatever you're going to worship, he goes, you need to take them an offering and tell them that you're sorry. He goes, take them a plate of fruit, something. Mm-hmm. He goes, we would put it in the water and pray to the water gods. And I was like, okay.
Which God in the Bible does not require you to do that.
Nope, I didn't.
Not at all.
I didn't even know him, but he knew me.
Yeah. Wow.
But we'll go back to Linda's book, because during all this health issues, the hole in my lung was getting bigger and bigger, and it's not a little hole. It's a big hole in my lung, and I was on oxygen, and I couldn't breathe without my oxygen. Like, it would hurt so bad. So after I passed away and I got home, I told the kids, I was like, we're going to church. There's a God out there, and we're going to find him. So I messaged our now pastor, and I said, I don't know what I got to do, but I got to find a church. So is it yours? I don't know, but I would like to come if we can. And then he would come to visit me in the hospital. And I went one Sunday, and I don't like to be the front of attention or in front of crowds or like outgoing. After the end of the service, they said that pastor came and got me, and he's like, son, we want to pray over you, and you need to come to the front of the church. I was like, no. So I go to the front of the church, and Linda prays over me, and my daughter was standing right there. She's my little sidekick. And so she goes, take off your oxygen. I was like, no. And I was like, just this morning, it was hurting to breathe without it. And she's like, no, you're under the anointing. You can take it off. Just take it off and take a deep breath. Okay. And that was the last time I've had my oxygen.
Wow. That is incredible. What a miracle.
And then, after all of that, I've had a couple of health scares. From the rupture of my esophagus, I was told I would never eat again. I had 2 portacasts. I had at least 10 PICC lines. The PICC lines would cause blood clots. The blood clots, I'd be on blood thinners, and I'd get internal bleeding. So I spent a year in and out of the hospital. Then I go to UCLA. I was 98 pounds. And they were just like, I don't know what to do. We've never seen this, but you will be in our books. And then they got me back stable. And one of the doctors was like, you'll never eat again, so you're just going to have to accept this feeding tube. And I go, who says? Your report or God's report? Because I will believe God's report over your report any day. And she goes, we'll see about that. And I go, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to eat again, and I will be back. And fast forward to now. I had my last swallow test, and everything went down. They said it was like dropping an egg off a 12-story building. It just went. But my tube will come out when I don't get dehydrated, and I can eat and not lose weight. So this past week, no, 2 weeks ago, I had to have 6 teeth pulled and dentures put in, because every time I would eat, I would crack a tooth or something. So then I would stand on the Bible and stand on God's promises. When my kids, they think I'm crazy, but I would sit there and yell, not today, Satan, not today. I said, I am the daughter of the Most High God. You're not taking me. And this is all for His glory. Because I was a mess growing up on drugs. I did everything. The only thing I didn't do was murder somebody. But even just the drugs or whatever, and that would send you to hell. But now, with everything going on, I am out there to prove and to glorify God. Because if it wasn't for Him, my kids would be orphans. I probably would have died long ago, because 2 years ago, my stepdad ended up with the same hole in his lung, and it was lung cancer, and he died 6 months after knowing. And so I know that there's work for the kingdom that needs to be done, and I will be here until I get it done. And I made a promise to God that I will write a book, which I'm working on little by little, but it'll be out there.
Wow. I mean, what an incredible story. And first of all, I'm super proud of you for living through all that and then still being able to glorify God and just give Him, the praise that He's worthy of. Because all the things that happened to you prior, like you said, are of free will. And because you weren't brought up in a Christian home, and it was a broken home.
Oh, yeah.
And you were looking for love in all the wrong places, which you found every wrong place, it sounds like. My gosh. What an incredible transformation after what you experienced. And your story is powerful, but there may be even more to it, because if God or Jesus is going to come and have that experience with you. Not everybody gets that. A lot of people would just have went ahead and went to hell. And so you have a mantle on your life that is incredible. And I can't wait to see how that pans out and what's going to happen from now until the end of your life, because I will follow your story as long as I'm living. And just see, because it's funny, like going back to us being in high school together. Like imagine when we were 16, 17, because that's the ages that we were. If somebody had said to us, when you guys are 44 years old, you're going to be doing a podcast talking about how she nearly went to hell and died and all of these things that happened. It just seems unfathomable that all of this could have happened, and then we end up where we are right now. But if God's hand is on it, and it's definitely on you, he's brought you through. And this whole thing with the feeding tube, I'm believing as well that you will be healed, and you will show those doctors that they are wrong. And just like Linda being healed from cancer after they tried to put her in hospice after the 5th time, and she wouldn't accept that. It's like they don't have the final say.
No.
God does. And as long as you stand on that and do what you were doing, which is so important, to repeat those scriptures saying, I will not die, but I will live, and standing on the word of God and praying those things over yourself is so incredibly important. And that's one of the things I like to reiterate when I get to interview people like you, is because the ones that did that are the ones that are sitting across from me. And so the people that may be listening now or in the future, months, years from now, whenever they get their hands on this, it might be the perfect timing that they hear it, and it might just save their life. So what you're doing is very, very important. And I thank you for your bravery.
Thank you.
And being a good example to your kids, because, I mean, wow. Wow. The things they've seen and lived through, but God. And so they can get through anything as long as God has his hand on them, which of course he does.
Oh yeah. My kids they may drive me crazy, like all kids do, but like my daughter was changing my PICC line at the age of 12. She's an angel, or both of my kids are, but we grow together, and they now know that there is a higher power. Mom's not crazy, but my daughter is now tapping into her spiritual side, and she's now starting to see things and dream things that we have to break down. But it's kind of cool knowing that they're not going to grow up not knowing that there is something else out there, and that when something does happen or you do get the opposition, that it's because the spiritual realm doesn't want your story out there. They don't, there's huge spiritual battles going on that a lot of people don't really know about.
Yeah, they're completely unaware. Mm-hmm. And one thing you said that I thought was important to revisit is the use of the Ouija board and the tarot cards and things of that nature, because I know people like have said in passing, like just around me, like it's not a big deal. Yeah, they did that when they were a kid, or, you know, they saw it at a friend's house and they just decided to go ahead and play it because it's just fun, and they don't believe that it's real. But it is very real. And they don't understand the doors that they have opened when you do these kinds of things, because all of that is witchcraft. And if anybody's listening that has played with a Ouija board or tarot cards, you know, innocently enough, because you don't understand the gravity of it, the important thing to do is to repent from it, turn from it, and then close those doors, command those things to go in the name of Jesus. Always in the name of Jesus. And you might get some pushback, because perhaps these demons have been, in play for quite a lot of time, and they like their space and they don't want to give it up. So, and I know you even had some issues getting here today, because it's like, They do not want you to spread the word and to tell your story. And it's just one of those things that it is kind of simple in that once you know your authority and you can close those doors, it's fairly easy to do it, but most people don't know to do it.
Yeah.
And they also think it sounds a little bit crazy. So
my son pointed out a good point this past weekend. He goes, Mom, you gotta be 21 to drink. You gotta be 18 to drive. He goes, you gotta be 18 or 21 to smoke. He goes, but you gotta be 8 years old to summons the devil. He goes, there's something wrong here, Mom. And I go, oh, you're so right. But they're not going to change it because they just think it's a board game. And it's not. It's you're opening doors that's, unless you know your authority, and I tend to get cocky with my authority, but I like
well, now you kind of can.
Yeah.
Because once you realize who you are in Christ and you have that authority, you need to be a little bit cocky about it because otherwise you're going to be meek. We need to stand strong.
Yeah, they'll walk all over you and play with you, but you're doing something right when the enemy just keeps on your tail and keeps trying to sidetrack you or distract you because they tend to distract and take your time away from the word and all that stuff. But if you stand your ground and you know what to do, and like when I was sick, I would even write the scriptures on my mirror and just repeat them over and over again. And if I didn't, and I didn't have the people in my life that I had, I probably might not even be here. He probably would have won. But I stood on the word and I surrounded myself with Christian people that are spiritual people that knew what they were talking about and who encouraged me to keep going. And I think we were doing church things like every day. Yeah, we were at the church literally every day. If not at the church, we were doing food ministries. Like we're doing 2 food ministries now. In Linda's book, she talks about Feed My Sheep and how she started that one. She's not up there no more, but I'm driving the truck to feed my sheep.
Oh my God.
And when the person that took over the food ministry is not there, I am running the food ministry.
Well, of course you are, because a lot of this is intertwined.
He's connecting the dots.
He is connecting the dots.
And I'm sure he's up there going, you didn't know, but I sure knew. And he's laughing.
Yeah.
He's got a good sense of humor, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Even like sitting here looking at you right now, I'm just kind of in disbelief, like thinking back from that many years ago, how we could be in this place. So
yeah, I would be like, if you would have said that when I was 16, I would be like, you were on some drugs back then.
You would have said I was the one on drugs. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just whatever you do, never take your eyes off of God. And know that you got to know that you know that you know that His word is true and He will never, never turn His back on you. And you don't need to seek out another person or another, I guess you could say, human, because He will give you all the love that you need. And He won't talk down to you. He won't abuse you. And His word never lies. So just look to Him because He's the perfect Father. Because when you're in the flesh, you're going to fail at some point or another in your life. But with Him, you can't do no wrong in His eyes. As long as you obey the scriptures and walk everything out.
So how has your journey been with forgiving yourself for everything that you've done that you feel are bad choices that got you to this point?
That was a hiccup for me for quite a bit, because the guy that broke in, I forgave him. I even called him to come over because he was homeless. And I said, you could take a shower. I'll cook you a dinner. I'll wash your clothes. But then you got to go.
Wait, this was after
Mhm.
he hurt you?
Yeah.
Wow.
This was after the feeding tube and everything. And then I forgave a lot of people. And I started seeing some changes. But then I was like, Lord, I'm not perfect. And I did a lot of things when I was bad, or when I was younger, that were not good. And he's like, if I don't hold it against you, then why are you holding it against yourself? And I was just like, oof.
Yep.
He always gets me like that. I was in the hospital one time and I was like, sorry, Father, I failed you. Just take me now. And he goes, no, I said be still, like in the dad voice. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah. And this last time, he told me that because I had to go through a big surgery in March, but they didn't do it. But 6.5 hours in, they almost nicked my aorta, and my stomach and my digestive tract was turning purple, so they had to stop. And I was like, okay, God, I'm not doing another surgery. You no. And he's like, even if I ask you, you won't. And I was like, ooh, why did you do this? And I was like, for a fact, if you were to ask me, I would jump. I'd be like, okay, where? Cut me open, just do whatever. And then he goes, you know why I did this, right? And I was like, no, I don't. And he goes, well, if the doctors healed you, they would get the glory. He goes, the glory's mine. I will heal you. I was like, oh, okay. So.
And how long ago was that?
In March.
Of this year?
Mm-hmm.
Like a couple of months ago.
Yeah. And then in June is when they did May or June, they did the swallow test and they said, liquids are going down and they're going down fast. And I was like,
and before they wouldn't?
No. It would just all sit in my chest like a sumo wrestler was sitting on my chest. But they would even have me lay in, I guess it's called the swimmer's position, after I would drink the barium swallow, or the barium, just to try to see if it would go down. They would even grab the x-ray table and tilt it. And there was a couple times I was almost upside down, trying to get it to go down. And now it wouldn't, but now it does. And I was only in the x-ray thing for like 5 minutes this time. And the other times I was in there for 45 minutes.
So what did the doctors say after they saw that it was going down this time? I don't know what's going on. That was my lung doctor too. He's like, these reports, and me and him my lung doctor and I were just crying like babies. But he's like, I don't know, but this report compared to this report to that report, it's closing, and now it's closed. But I didn't do it. I go, I know who did it. And he's like, who? And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, oh. And then at UCLA, a nurse came in. And I was there for 3 weeks. So I saw every nurse at least twice. This nurse came in. He went to Hillsong in Australia or whatever. And he said that my story made his hair stand up on his neck. And he goes, your faith is just incredible. But I never saw him back again. My daughter never saw him back. And it was just, I know who you were. He was an angel just testing to see if I would tell my testimony. Wow. It's crazy roller coaster ride, but I'll do it all again. As long as I can have Jesus as my pilot. I'm just speechless, honestly. Wow. So is there anything else you wanted to share before we close? Yeah.
We were at UCLA for my tube fell out. Your feeding tubes do not just fall out. They stick us in the hallway where they bring in the ambulances. Me and my daughter are sitting there in a chair. They come in and they're wheeling this guy in, and he is gray. And the paramedic was on top of him, pounding on his chest. I look at my daughter looks at me, and we're like, oh Lord Jesus, why? And then I go, baby girl, we got to pray, and we got to pray now. And his wife comes running in, and his sons, they're running in after him, crying. The doctor goes, okay, we're going to call it. And I was like, oh no, not today. So we're praying, and the next thing we know, we've got a beat. Get up to surgery now. And they're running. And I was just like high-fiving my daughter, and I was just like, oh my gosh, are you serious right now? And my daughter ran into his son for, I think, 4 days downstairs. But my daughter's shy, so she wouldn't go up to him and go, you know what happened? Because we know what happened. But
it was a divine appointment for you guys to be there and see that.
Now when I go to the hospital, it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's always for somebody else. And one day, I'm going to go to a hospital. This is my goal. And everybody that's in there that's sick is going to come out and walk out healed. If someone passes away, they're not going to, no. They're going to come back to life. And I think that's what he has planned for me, is because we need to see that again. We need to see the dead raised. We need to see miracle healings. We need to see Azusa Street revival, but in our time.
Yes, we do.
So it's going to happen soon.
I believe it is as well. I mean, we're in such crazy times right now that it's going to take an Azusa Street revival type of awakening to get people to see what they need to see and to wake up. The church is very asleep. And those of us that can see what's going on and are aware, we're on the front lines of the intercession. And it's a big job.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very big job.
I always tell my daughter, I was like, I could feel it. She's like, you could feel what? And I was like, the spiritual world is heavy. And I go, you got people out there playing church. Mm-hmm. And they're not armored up. You have to be armored up. And you have to have the sword so you can go and cut through all the little games that the enemy plays. And he's slick, or so he thinks. But when you're in the Word, you know all his games.
Right. Yeah. But for all the people that aren't in the Word, they are very easily fooled.
Oh, yeah.
The deception is incredible, and it looks so innocent on many different topics. But it's just one of those things that if you don't know because you're not in the Word, it's easy to go down the wrong path and to have no idea that you're even heading down the wrong path until you're so far gone that it's, very difficult to get back.
Yeah, that's what I tell my kids too. If any negative thoughts or anything that is not loving and uplifting, that's not of God. If you hear like, oh, I'm so ugly, or whatever the kids might think of, get behind me, Satan. Here's not today. God says I am beautifully, wonderfully created, and that's all you just gotta say all that and then walk it out.
Yeah,
because that's what I would do when I was so sick. I'm like, not today, Satan. And then I'd be talking out loud, and my kids are like, Mom, are you okay? I am fine.
Right.
But, yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing your story, having the bravery to do it, and for being with us today. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you so much for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe and share this podcast on your social media platforms. If you're interested in learning more about Evox Session, please visit my website at evoxsession.com. Thank you and have a blessed day.